Some philosophers tried to explain the world. Others tried to improve it. Friedrich Nietzsche wanted something far more unsettling. He wanted to challenge every belief that people accepted without question. He asked uncomfortable questions. He questioned morality. He questioned religion. He questioned truth itself. His words inspired artists, psychologists, and philosophers. They were also misunderstood, misused, and debated for more than a century. Few thinkers have been admired and criticized as intensely as Friedrich Nietzsche. But behind the bold ideas stood a lonely man. A man who spent much of his life battling illness, isolation, and disappointment. To understand his philosophy, we must first understand his life. Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche was born on October 5, 1844, in the small village of Racken, in what was then the Kingdom of Prussia. His father was a Lutheran pastor. His family was deeply religious. For a time, it seemed likely that young Friedrich would follow the same path. But fate had different plans. When Nietzsche was only 4 years old, his father died after a serious illness. Only months later, his younger brother also passed away. These early losses surrounded his childhood with grief. He was raised by his mother, grandmother, and two aunts in a household filled with discipline, education, and faith. Yet even as a child, Nietzsche displayed an extraordinary curiosity. He loved music, he loved literature, and above all, he loved ideas. His teachers quickly recognized his remarkable intelligence. He earned a place at Schulpforta, one of the most respected schools in Germany. There, he immersed himself in classical languages, history, Greek philosophy, and ancient literature. He admired the civilizations of Greece and Rome, not simply because of their achievements, but because they dared to ask profound questions about human existence. Later, Nietzsche studied classical philology at the University of Bonn before transferring to the University of Leipzig. It was in Leipzig that his intellectual world changed forever. He discovered the writings of the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer argued that human life was driven by an endless and often painful force he called the will. Most readers found his philosophy deeply pessimistic. Nietzsche found it unforgettable, although he would later reject many of Schopenhauer's conclusions. The encounter shaped his thinking for years to come. His brilliance attracted widespread attention. In an extraordinary achievement, Nietzsche was appointed professor of classical philology at the University of Basel in Switzerland in 1869. He was only 24 years old. He had not yet completed the traditional doctoral process. Even so, his reputation was already exceptional. Around this time, Nietzsche met one of the most famous composers in Europe, Richard Wagner. Their friendship began with admiration. Wagner believed Germany needed a cultural rebirth. Nietzsche believed philosophy could awaken humanity from intellectual complacency. For several years, the two men enjoyed long conversations about music, art, culture, and the future of Europe. Nietzsche admired Wagner almost as a mentor, but admiration can change. As time passed, Nietzsche became increasingly uncomfortable with Wagner's growing nationalism and his return to traditional religious themes. Their visions of the future no longer matched. The friendship slowly dissolved. The separation was deeply painful. Yet it also marked an important turning point. Nietzsche became more independent than ever before. He refused to belong to any school of thought, any political movement, or any intellectual tradition. He insisted on thinking for himself, regardless of the consequences. At the same time, his health began to decline. For years, Nietzsche suffered from severe migraines, chronic pain, digestive problems, and failing eyesight. Some days he could barely read. Some days he could barely write. The physical suffering eventually forced him to resign from his university position. He was only 34 years old. His academic career had come to an unexpected end. But something remarkable happened. Freed from the responsibilities of teaching, Nietzsche devoted himself completely to writing. He traveled between Switzerland, Italy, and southern France, searching for climates that eased his illness. He often lived alone. He rarely stayed in one place for long. His days followed a quiet rhythm. Long walks, hours of reflection, and endless writing. During these years, many of his most influential ideas began to take shape. He argued that people should not blindly accept inherited beliefs. Instead, they should examine every value for themselves. He challenged conformity. He challenged comfort. He challenged the fear of standing alone. For Nietzsche, the greatest danger was not failure. It was living according to someone else's expectations. These ideas would soon appear in books unlike anything the philosophical world had ever seen. Books that would shock readers. Books that would inspire generations. And books that would forever change the history of philosophy. Yet, as his ideas grew stronger, his loneliness grew deeper, and the greatest triumphs of his mind would arrive just before its tragic collapse. By the early 1880s, Friedrich Nietzsche had become a man without a permanent home. He wandered from city to city, from Switzerland ... to Italy ... to the south of France, always searching for a climate that might ease his constant pain. His body grew weaker, but his mind burned brighter than ever. Living in small rented rooms, often completely alone, Nietzsche devoted nearly every waking hour to writing. He knew that very few people were reading his books. Publishers printed only small numbers of copies. Some books sold only dozens of copies. Others received little attention at all. To the world, he was an obscure philosopher. But Nietzsche believed that his ideas belonged to the future. He once wrote that he was writing for readers who had not yet been born. During these extraordinary years, he produced the works that would define his legacy. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he introduced one of his most famous ideas, the Übermensch, often translated as the Overman or Superman. Contrary to many later misunderstandings, Nietzsche was not describing a ruler or a superior race. He imagined an individual who constantly overcame his own weaknesses, a person who created meaning instead of waiting for the world to provide it. Another statement from his writings became one of the most debated sentences in the history of philosophy. God is dead. Nietzsche was not claiming that a divine being had literally died. He was describing a cultural transformation. He believed that modern society was losing its traditional religious foundations. The question that followed was even more important. If old beliefs no longer guided humanity, what would take their place? Would people create new values based on responsibility and courage? Or would they fall into emptiness and despair? These questions remain just as powerful today. Nietzsche challenged his readers to stop living according to habit. He urged them to examine every belief, every fear, every ambition, not because certainty was impossible, but because truth demanded courage. He admired those who dared to think independently, even when independence came at the cost of loneliness. Yet while his philosophy reached extraordinary heights, his health continued to decline. The headaches became more severe. His eyesight worsened. Exhaustion followed him everywhere. Then, in January of 1889, something happened that has become one of the most famous moments in the history of philosophy. While walking through the streets of Turin, Italy, Nietzsche reportedly saw a horse being beaten by its driver. According to several accounts, he rushed toward the animal, threw his arms around its neck, and burst into tears. Moments later, he collapsed. Whether every detail of this story is historically exact remains uncertain, but historians agree on what followed. Nietzsche suffered a complete mental breakdown. He never fully recovered. The brilliant philosopher, who had spent his life questioning reality, could no longer care for himself. Friends brought him back to Germany. For years, his mother cared for him. After her death, his sister, Elizabeth Foster Nietzsche, assumed responsibility for his care and for his unpublished writings. She would later organize and publish many of his notes. Modern scholars have also pointed out that she sometimes presented his ideas in ways that reflected her own political views rather than his original intentions. Because of this, readers today often distinguish carefully between Nietzsche's published works and later editorial interpretations. On August 25, 1900, Friedrich Nietzsche died at the age of 55. The cause of death is still debated, though it followed many years of physical and mental illness. During his lifetime, he never experienced the worldwide recognition that he had imagined. His books remained relatively unknown. His lectures had ended years earlier. His final decade passed almost entirely in silence. And yet, history had not finished with Friedrich Nietzsche. After his death, his writings spread across Europe and eventually around the world. Thinkers such as Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and countless others engaged with his ideas. Artists found inspiration in his call for creativity. Psychologists admired his insight into the hidden struggles of the human mind. Writers discovered a new way of exploring individuality and freedom. At the same time, some of his ideas were misunderstood and misused for political purposes, often in ways that many scholars argue contradicted his own writings. His legacy remains complex, powerful, and endlessly debated. Perhaps that is exactly what Nietzsche expected. He never wanted followers. He wanted thinkers. He did not ask people to agree with him. He asked them to question themselves, to examine the values they inherited, to confront fear instead of hiding from it, to accept that life contains suffering and still choose to create meaning. Friedrich Nietzsche never claimed to possess all the answers. He believed that the search itself was what transformed a human being. More than a century after his death, his books continue to provoke, inspire, and challenge readers across the world. Because the greatest question he ever asked was never about God. or morality, or civilization. It was about the individual. Who are you when every certainty disappears? Perhaps that is why Friedrich Nietzsche remains one of the most influential philosophers in history, not because he told humanity what to believe, but because he dared to ask what almost no one else was willing to ask.